Hey, welcome everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Ecosystem Aces. I'm excited to be joined this morning. I'm Chip Rodgers, CMO at WorkSpan, and excited to be joined by Carlos Aragon. Carlos is Associate Vice President of Partner and Product Marketing at Mavenir, and we've been talking, ahead of time. And gosh, love to. First of all, welcome, Carlos. Glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Chip.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking, Carlos. Carlos, leads, product and partner marketing at Mavenir, and Carlos is involved in a lot of, working with a lot of partners and helping partners get enabled and managing the a large amount of MDF funds and getting partners, helping partners to get the word out about Mavenir and your products and your shared products. And so why don't we start there, Carlos? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you and your team are up to at Mavenir.
Thank you. So a couple of things. I'm going to give you like a quick story of where I come from, and because my experience in the partnership space comes actually in two routes. The first one is when in my previous position within Mavenir, when I was in charge of the enterprise marketing and business unit activities. On that front, we were involved in a channel partner program for enterprises. So basically, we enable channel partners to resell the Mavenir products. And we had to handle, all of the different assets and tools you need to provide the channel partners, including trainings, assets, market development funds, and other stuff. And lately, in the position that I'm handling of product and partner marketing, it's more focused on joint go-to-market with partners that are selling solutions together with Mavenir, not directly reselling Mavenir products. In many situations, we go to market together, and then each company sells their own independent activities. Sometimes Mavenir acts like the common aggregator of solutions or system integrator and resell some of those partner solutions. Sometimes it's the other way around. So it's a little bit of a combination. But what we're doing lately and what's kind of consuming most of my time these last few months is a lot related to deployment of 5G networks. And both 5G networks and particularly the new kind of approach to deploying radio networks, which is called Open RAN. It's all based on open APIs that allow a multi-vendor radio solutions. That requires a large ecosystem of partners. There is so many moving elements. A lot of companies provide value in their specific market segments. So it's really a balancing act of figuring out which are the interests that both companies have. And be able to find a joint routes to market with those companies so that everybody can benefit and in the end provide a much better value proposition to the end customers, which in this case tend to be mobile network operators. So that's a little bit in a nutshell what we're doing these days.
Yeah, so there's so much change and new technology that's been rolling out with 5G and just all those endpoint bringing such speed and power right to the endpoint. I'm sure I'm sure you guys have been pretty busy.
Well, very much, and particularly on the partner front, because one of the main changes introduced by 5G is the network standards that kind of develop the 5G networks focus a lot on allowing virtualization and lately containerization of the network functions, now as they call them cloud network functions, CNFs. So what this means is that now you can build your network elements as 100% software. There is still some hardware dependencies, particularly in the radio part, where in the end you still need to radiate through a physical device. But the situation here is that everything is virtualized now, and the flexibility is provided to the end customers, which are the end customers for us, the carriers, the mobile network operators or communication service providers, to decide where and how they want to deploy these things. And Mavenir's message is that we deliver one network, all software in any cloud. That means that we build everything with the flexibility so that the carrier can decide, okay, for certain elements, I want to do it in a private cloud, or I want to do it on bare metal. For some other elements, I want to put it on a public cloud. What happens is that when you open all of these possibilities, obviously a company cannot do everything themselves. So you have to rely on an ecosystem of partners. So for example, in the case of public cloud, we work together with Amazon Web Services, AWS, or we work with Azure, Google Cloud Platform, basically the main hyperscalers in the market, to make sure that if one of our customers wants to deploy, they are the ones who choose the platform they want to use. Sometimes it's for technical reasons. Sometimes it's for traditional, relationships they've been using a certain hyperscaler, and they just want to continue with those ones to kind of build into those framework agreements they have. On the other hand, for example, they may want to deploy on-premise. They have their own data centers, they have their own infrastructure, and what they want to do is just have some kind of private network hyperscaler that can go in there, like VMware or Red Hat, with whom we also work. And that means there is so many interests in there and so many kind of integrations and value propositions that require a lot of close monitoring from marketing, because every time you do something, you need to kind of broadcast it out there. You need to deliver that message, amplify that message, and make sure that when you do, you provide value for both. Actually, it's a three-way. You have to provide value for both the partner companies that are going to market, but also amplify the value that's going to bring to the end customer, which is for us, the communication service provider, but also to their end customer, which is the end user. So for things like, for example, when you're trying to work with Open Run and you're trying to provide, better performance, use artificial intelligence tools to make the network make decisions on its own and be able to optimize the traffic based on the demands of the users at a certain point. The value chain goes on what you're going to help the customer with and how both partners are going to deliver that. With each partner doing their own responsibility area, and then how that's going to translate into a better user experience for the end customer, which is your customer's customer. In this case, the person using their mobile phone, in the middle of a city, or sometimes in a rural community where they're limited. So balancing those interests, it's super exciting, but it's quite complicated.
Yeah. It sounds, there are a lot of players, and you're right. I think anything that I think especially in this when you're talking about going out all the way to the endpoints, and sort of IoT kinds of technology, there are always a lot of players involved. It's not just a simple solution. How do you guys manage all of that as you're delivering solutions?
Well, sometimes it's basically juggling a lot of things at the same time, because the number of customers keep growing and the number of resources we have tends to remain the same most of the time. Sometimes you try to implement best practices so that you can reuse and recycle a lot of the activities, or even sometimes like templates for collateral that you put together. I mean, after all, for example, when you sell private networks, doesn't matter who you partner with, most of those marketing collateral are going to be very similar, just with minor modifications, maybe at the introduction, or reserving some space somewhere to be able to put the partner's logo and some contact information for them. In other situations, some of those activities are more specific, more tied to the customer. So just to give you a quick and dirty example here, with one of our partners with AWS, there is specific deployments that we're doing using their Elastic Kubernetes system. So that requires a certain integration of our products into there. So whatever we do in there cannot be reused with other implementations, because they have their own specific tools. But you still have to do the marketing. You still have to figure out what is the value proposition, why it's important that we're doing it that way, what flexibilities it brings to the carriers, and what benefits it brings to the end users. The kind of difficult part in here is to interact with those partners, because all of them have their own interest, of course, but they have sometimes different scales than we are. I mean, Mavenir is a company right now that we are around 5,000 employees. When you compare that with AWS, that it's in the tens of thousands, it's much bigger, and they have kind of bigger goals with not just the telco space and not just specifically Open RAN, but many other areas of business. Their demand for kind of joint activities and support tends to be much bigger. And when you're a smaller company, you have to figure out a way that you can still entertain those needs and benefit from going together with them and kind of drive that momentum. But on the other hand, come to terms with the realization that you don't have hundreds of people in product marketing or partner marketing. You have just a handful of professionals with you. And either you are very nimble, or you have to realize what things you have to say no to the partner, even if you'd like to do it, because you just don't have the resources. But In this particular case, the advice I would give to people in the same situation is, first of all, have an honest and truthful channel of communication with your partner, and make them understand from the beginning what your limitations are, so that both companies can, or both partner marketing teams can optimize that go-to-market and figure out what are the better or most effective goals that we need to go for, or sometimes what is the low-hanging fruit that will kind of allow us to collect benefits or to collect results with kind of a minimal effort. And then build on that thing to put together a proper partnership strategy, and then execute it, of course.
So how do you keep everyone informed? How do you because there's a lot of you got marketing assets, your partner has marketing assets, you're trying to bring things together. You got multiple partners, multiple players involved. Tell me about, do you have like a bill of materials? Do you have some guidelines that people need to follow? How are you running
Yes.
webinars? How are you sort of keeping everybody up to speed on Mavenir and your capabilities and value props?
So when you're doing the outbound part, and like for example, in our enterprise portfolio, the plan we normally do is we have normally like once a month, we have a webinar where we bring up the latest kind of product developments, the latest features, or the latest kind of key sales aspect. If there is any new, let's say, incentive or any new offer or something that's going to be interesting enough for the market, we bring it there. We also publish a few email newsletters. Our partners are subscribed to them. We have newsletters for customers. We have newsletters for partners. We tend to keep them different. And there is very specific information for them. One thing that is critical for companies that have a massive resale space is just doing newsletters and doing outreach is normally not good enough. You have to be very well prepared for inbound requests. And automation helps a lot in here. And what I mean automation is not just, artificial intelligence and those kind of things, but providing ways that you can help those partners build their own stuff. With this, for example, we implemented a partner portal. And what that allows basically is you can create a set of assets, marketing collateral, white label collateral that's ready to rebrand, put it in a centralized place, and then allow all the partners to get their own login to go in there. They can get information on the products they want. You can even filter the content you offer them based on the products they're reselling or the segments that they're focusing, sometimes based on the contract you have with them. And then every time they need something, they can just go in there, get the latest version. If we do any updates, we don't even need to inform them. When they need the assets, they can go in there. It's always the latest content. It automatically applies for them the logos or the contact information for them, and allows them to render a PDF they can immediately sell to the customer. So most of these platforms, what they have is tools that allow you to even launch the emails directly from there. So you can just type the information about your end customer, select the assets you want to send, and the platform will send that email on your behalf with your email address. But it will save you the effort of kind of building that email and sending that asset. And those templates of how to send these things, we can also provide in the system so that they can just choose what they want to send. And basically, it's very little effort. It takes a little bit of energy to put that together at the beginning. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a lot of work, but you do a lot of work at the beginning so that you can then grow and scale and save all of that effort individually with every new partner that you onboard. So when a new partner gets onboarded, they just get their portal credentials. They go in there, find everything they need. If they have questions, yes, we tend to do with every new partner some kind of a little bit one-on-one engagement with them, and kind of get questions answered for them, and then normally they operate themselves. Again, also how, depending on how you implement those portals and how many modules you activate, you can also activate the market development funds. You can activate opportunity registration through there that you can then feed into Salesforce or other kind of opportunity management tools. You can also implement marketing automation tools to connect, for example, to HubSpot or to Marketo or other tools. It depends on the vendor you use. I'm not going to make some publicity here about which vendor we're using because, I mean, we evaluated a lot, and in the end, everybody has to decide one based on specific needs. It's not like one is better than the other, but it does help a lot. And then on the other front, on the front, where we kind of go together with the big players like AWS or Intel or VMware or Red Hat, those guys, It's more of a one-on-one situation where we have periodic meetings. With some of them, it's weekly, some of them bi-weekly, some of them where the activities are more like coasting now. Maybe we do once a month. When you get closer to a major event like the Mobile World Congress, that tends to be, more periodic because there is a lot of activities there. This year, for example, we had 7 different partners showing Mavenir demos at their booth, and that required a lot of coordination.
Wow.
But yeah, again, the important part here is how you communicate when you are going to people who resell your solutions. There's a maybe 60-70% part is outreach on letting them know the latest stuff. 30% of them finding their own stuff through either a website or a partner portal. But when you deal with people that you do joint strategies together, that requires a lot of handholding.
Yeah. So yeah, Mobile World Congress is huge in that space, and it's a must attend event. And so you had 7 partners that were actually demonstrating Mavenir as a part of their overall solution.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, congrats on making that happen. Well done. But also, I mean, just I think it's a great example of the power of partnering and partner marketing, right? That you're using, well, in this case, 1/7, or I guess, I don't know, half of the dollars, but you're getting multiplied by 7 for the reach and impact that you're having. So talk a little bit about how you think about that and how you've implemented some of those capabilities within for Mavenir.
Well, first of all, this starts. The event is in February. This starts way ahead of time. We started activities around September of the previous year. Whenever we do these things, the key important part in here is very early in the game. Both companies need to understand what is their outcome that they're trying to obtain from that Mobile World Congress participation. Sometimes it's brand awareness. Sometimes the situation is that they want to put their brand out there and they want to show that they're collaborating with, in our case, for example, is one of the driving forces behind Open Run. So this year, a lot of those partnerships were related to, or those joint activities at Mobile World Congress were related to Open Run activities. Sometimes it's a different thing. Like previous years, we've been doing a lot about RCS business messaging and pushing conversational commerce. And in those fronts, it was all about the awareness, not specifically about Mavenir. I mean, for Mavenir, it was showing there that we were a leader in RCS business messaging at the time. But for other partners, there is to show that they are in that kind of new wave of technology to kind of present themselves as a key player in there, and then on the other side to kind of leverage their technologies and their solutions to be able to sell to those carriers too. One important aspect in there is that when you go to these joint events, it has to be very clear who owns the responsibility for what. Sometimes there's also funding involved when you're doing joint demos. Sometimes there is equipment that need to be purchased. Normally, whoever manufactures a certain thing provides the equipment. But when it comes to virtualization, well, the thing is, when it's software, even if you're a hyperscaler buying a specific hardware, if you're going to be doing something on premises, it's not very clear who owns that part. So in those cases, we normally also play with another a partner in there who wants to provide the equipment and also be part of the picture. So just to give you an example, one of the things we did at Mobile World Congress is we did a joint demo together with Vodafone. It was at the Vodafone booth. It had the Mavenir radio units in there, and the demonstration was showing the Mavenir radio access network elements, this distributed unit and centralized unit. And we were in partnership there also with HPE and with Qualcomm. So HPE was providing the servers for the demo, basically Intel-powered servers, which Intel is another one of our partners. And then Qualcomm was providing an accelerator card to do the kind of the level 1 acceleration for the radio interfaces. They were all running Mavenir software on top, and then they were connected using Mavenir's radio to deliver a full Open Run solution for Vodafone. We had kind of joint blogs posted together. We had the assets in the booth at Vodafone. All of us were sending, we put together some posters to put on our booth to show the different partners that we had so that we could send traffic over there. And we also coordinated with them, like if they wanted to carry customers for visits, provide some hours. In addition to that, our CTO and a couple other experts from Mavenir, we work with them to record interviews for those partners so that we could cross-pollinate in our social networks. So with VMware, for example, we recorded an interview over there. Intel came over to our booth to record also a couple of pieces with our CTO. So all of those things kind of highlight that we're driving the ecosystem forward in the case of Open RAN, that we're keeping it open, and that both, the different players in the Mavenir side and the partner side are providing their own distinctive value. Critical aspect here is having complementary portfolios where overlap is minimized, because in the past we've seen situations where we've been partnering with some companies, we've been going jointly to market, but then the other partner had some product portfolio that conflicted with ours. And even though the agreement was, we were going to go to market together with a certain set of products where Mavenir would provide A and the partner would provide B, in some situations where the partner's salespeople had the opportunity to also sell components of A, they basically went rogue and still tried to sell the product instead of the part of the partnership. And that drove into some friction, some problems. Some of those partnerships eventually we ended up breaking because we saw that it wasn't going in the right direction. So trying to minimize the overlap is important. But if there is overlaps, then you have to set certain very specific rules. And you have to define accountability for both companies. Maybe not to the point of setting up penalties and things like that, but at least make sure that the accountability comes from the companies training their salespeople, where the boundaries are going to be, where the joint opportunities are going to go, and make sure that they can stay within the rails.
Yeah. Well, I love this example, Carlos, just, because it's just a classic of so many, companies, companies coming together, each providing their own specific value proposition. And like you said, you can't build everything. No company can build everything all the time, right? So you had a solution being delivered by Vodafone. So you got Vodafone involved there. You have Mavenir, of course, HPE, Qualcomm, Intel, and I think was VMware part of that as well, or was that a separate kind of?
No, VMware was in a separate demo. We also did.
So, but I mean, still, so Vodafone, HPE, Qualcomm, Intel, Mavenir, all coming together to put this whole solution together for customers. It's fantastic. That's amazing, and so but also a lot of coordination on building the marketing capabilities, the marketing assets, the message, the rules of engagement, co-selling. Talk a little bit about co-selling. Like once that you hit the market and you get sales teams out there trying to close business together. How does that all work?
So on that front, I'm not going to be able to give you a lot because we do have a separate team for that. We have our own business development team that works together with the partners. So when we reach a point that we're going to sell, they normally take over and they handle the day-to-day activities. So they deal with the conflicts, they deal with those kind of rules. But there is something that marketing needs to provide there, and that is the tools they need to be able to drive that sale to the end. And that's where we work together with putting together. So, for example, last few couple of weeks, I've been working together with VMware on a couple of blog posts out there that included a video of the demo we put together for Mobile World Congress to drive awareness in the space that in some situations you may want to go with the hybrid cloud. So in the case of radio, for example, Open RAN, it's normally the cell side is deployed locally. It has to be at the edge. Latency and performance is really important. So you're going to run that on a specific server running at the cell side. Now you can run that on bare metal, just putting the software on top of it. But if you want to be able to scale and manage it normally, like easily, let's just say, you're going to need a hyperscaler there so that you can deploy the software as containers and kind of mix and match and change whatever you need. In those cases, we use either VMware as a partner, we use Red Hat as a partner. We also have our own hyperscaler platform called Mavenir WebScale. But in the case of VMware, for example, We did that kind of joint go-to-market together. We agreed on the blog post. They wrote a blog post. I wrote another one that goes on the same direction, and we cross-link to each other. We put the video in there. We coordinated to publish it at the same time. And then we also work on putting together some joint solution briefs that explain how Mavenir solution is integrated into their VMware Telco Cloud, for example. Or we do the same thing with other partners like Red Hat. And we put together joint press releases together about new solutions that are there in the market. So those tools, we kind of require a lot of follow-up and tracking with those partners to put together a joint content calendar. And then both sales support content, which is like presentation, solution briefs. Sometimes we do joint white papers. We do a lot of them with Intel. Sometimes it's also outreach and awareness, doing joint email campaigns. Sometimes it's doing blog posts, besides doing press releases. Sometimes it's doing webinars together, doing videos together where both companies work together. Sometimes it's talking about a success story, and we go and interview one of our customers where we deployed successfully, and we basically provide the pitch together. Just to give an example, another recent activity we've done is with Worldwide Technology, where we also work with VMware and with HPE, with Hewlett Packard Enterprise. In this case, we work with HPE. In other activities, we work with Dell, because they're kind of in the same level, in the same game of providing the servers. But in this case, with Worldwide Technology, the partnership combines Mavenir, HPE, VMware, and Worldwide Technology as the systems integrator to provide a single hand to shake, single neck to choke, whatever you want to call it, for Open RAN. So basically, when you deploy something that has such a big ecosystem of partners, one thing that the carriers have been used to in the past is to just buy everything from a single vendor. In fact, since the early 2000s, a lot of the carriers have outsourced their network planning and network management functions to big vendors out there. So now when they buy a new radio solution, they just buy everything from a single vendor, just because it's easier for them to have one hand to shake, and then when something goes wrong, one neck to choke. And the problem is, when you deal with an open ecosystem, think Open RAN, think Wi-Fi, think many other solutions where there is multiple vendors. It's good to have one system integrator that deals with those partners, that coordinates the roadmap, so that when Maven introduces a new feature that has a certain dependency on something that needs to be supported by the hyperscaler, like VMware, or something in the hyperscaler has something that needs to be supported by the servers, like implementing, for example, the latest fourth generation Intel Xeon scalable processors. They all work together so that everything aligns at the same time and it's ready for the customer. And when we did this together, we did a press release to announce it in a blog post. And then we did an interview at Mobile World Congress, where we sat people from each company together, and we did a live broadcast, and interviews available on everybody's website to see. But all of those activities kind of highlight that even in a multi-partner, where you have, in this case, 4 players, each player has their own areas of responsibility and its own value that can bring together. And then there is WWT, in this case, Worldwide Technology, that coordinates with us to make sure the roadmap provides a solution that behaves like if it was a single vendor, even though each party is doing their own part.
Yeah, so they're sort of providing the glue that makes sure that all the pieces fit together. I had a question on LinkedIn come up from Gagandeep Saini. Considering the examples of multi-company co-innovation example you just provided, how do you manage partner communications at such a multi-company collaborative partner engagement today? Do you think there's a scope to make it better?
Of course, there is always a scope to make it better. There are things that work, there are things that don't work, particularly on this case that I've been talking about recently, where we go together jointly. I haven't figured out a way that we can make it better with automation. This requires a lot of hand-holding, and most of the activities are unique. So the only way you can scale that and make it better is by having people who are experts, who understand the technology, who understand the needs of the partners and the needs of the customers, being part of your team. So hiring the right people is important here. On the other front, when you're basically working with your resellers, it's less of having people in your team, it's more of having people in the partner's team. So you need to make sure that the people they have in roles like sales engineering are properly trained and understand what your solutions provide best. Not to show them your solution is better than the others, but to show them how your solution is different, so that they are the ones that have the knowledge to identify the opportunities. They may be dealing with some customer, and they're going to be recommending to the customer the best solution for the customer. Sometimes they'll go with us, sometimes they'll go with another vendor, but they're the ones making that choice. You need to enable them with those training materials, with supporting assets, so that when they make that decision, they have the information they need. That requires having easy access to those tools. And for that, I always recommend implement the partner portal. Spend a little bit of an effort there, building it up with collateral, do periodic sales training, record the assets, and then make them available in those partner portals. Create some kind of curriculum of training. One example that I can use here is when we acquired Telestacks a couple of years ago. It's a CPaaS provider that we acquired and integrated into our solutions. One thing that Telestacks used to do quite well is they had this kind of CPaaS certification program, like the CPaaS Academy. And it was paired with something called the CPaaS Playbook. So they had a specific website where they would send their customers, and they had all of the marketing assets that they needed were there, similar to a partner portal. Because in the end, for Telestacks, they were enabling carriers to sell CPaaS solutions. So their end customers were not the enterprises using the APIs, were the Tatas of the world, you call them AT&Ts, Verizon, those guys are that are trying to implement APIs to be able to compete against Twilio or other people that are taking their enterprise business away. And the problem they found many of the times is that the people that were in those carriers trying to sell this new API model were people that had been selling subscriptions their entire life, but subscriptions to mobile phones, landlines, internet connections, not really, how to sell APIs. So a lot of the effort was on delivering the training mechanisms, making them not just watch the trainings, but join a virtual session or a live session. Most of the times it was virtual. At least when we acquired it was during the pandemic. So we had to do everything virtually. But you have them join. There is a presenter from the company that kind of delivers the entire training. Or it can be also pre-recorded. And then at the end, you have to make them run through an exam and get certified. If they do, they get a diploma, a nice diploma that they can put with kind of like some social images they can put on their LinkedIn profile and stuff. But putting together those kind of programs helps a lot, because it makes sure that your partner has people who understand the technology. They understand how it brings value to them, not just to their customer, but also to them. What's going to enable them? What are kind of the new things they can upsell that allows them to make more business? And they can be better prepared when the customer comes with questions, so that they don't have to delay and they can answer immediately.
That's fantastic. Carlos, this has been terrific. Gosh, we covered a lot of ground, and you get a lot done with a small but mighty team. As you said, a handful of folks, and you're you got a lot of ground to cover. So as we wrap here, any sort of piece of advice that you would have for anyone watching that's helped you be successful throughout your career?
Yeah, there is a few. I mean, you've seen me already. I can talk for hours. I have multiple pieces of advice. I already gave one. It's like, if you can build a partner portal, it's a lot of effort, but it really pays off. But kind of the biggest advice I would give here when dealing with partners, people buy from people. There is no level of automation that can replace personal relationships. So you have to help those partners nurture those personal relationships with their customers. But also you have to nurture your own personal relationship with those partners. Because at the end of the day, when things become stressful, when there are deliverables and deadlines coming, it's that personal relationship, the one that's going to help those people drive that extra mile, do the extra effort, work that 11th hour to make sure that both companies are successful in the end. That's kind of one critical aspect. And then, of course, to be able to nurture that personal relations, what I mentioned before, honesty and truth. Of course, every company has their own confidential information, and there are certain barriers of how much you can share with the other partner. But you need to figure out a way that you can share as much as you can. Do not withhold things that you don't have to withhold. Be transparent and honest. When problems arise, be proactive. Don't wait to see if the problem solves itself. Even if you think you can solve the problem, let your partner know in advance. Hey, we have this hiccup, we have this roadblock. We're working to solve it, but so that they can be prepared with a plan B if something happens and they need to react.
Right.
That's what I would recommend. honesty and truth, and then of course nurture those personal relations.
Yeah, and communication, right? Keeping everybody
it,
informed on
exactly, it's
the good, the
important.
bad, and the challenges.
Yeah.
Excellent.
There is no magic book. I mean, I wish we had. Otherwise, I mean, we would be super rich. You and I we could just co-author it together. There's no magic recipe here. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of the things you just, no matter how much you've been in the industry, a lot of things you keep learning every day. So always keep an open mind and keep learning.
Awesome. Carlos, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and expertise. This has been fantastic, and I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, and it's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Carlos, thank you for joining, and thank you all for joining, and we will see you next time on the next Ecosystem Aces broadcast. Thanks, everybody.